Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to Rabia, Colin, and to Undisclosed, and to all the audience. I appreciate y'all attention, and I thank y'all for inviting me to bring my story here. My name is Carmen Woods. I came to prison at the tender age of 19. I was wrongly convicted for first-degree murder and attempt murder, November 20th, 1982. I was sentenced to life without parole, plus 12 and a half to 25 years, which is a DBI, meaning death by incarceration. And in that sense there, I was caught up also in a mass incarceration movement that started with Ronald Reagan back in the 1980s. And this means that DAs had open field to get a conviction by any means necessary. And I was a victim of that. And I say that death by incarceration, which some believe that I might have been buried in the dirt, not to see another daylight ever again. I say I was only planted. And when you plant something with the proper cultivation, it will grow. I came to prison as a 19-year-old child. My mind was still to develop. And now I'm a 63-year-old man. And I thank Allah for blessing me with my health, faculties, and the will to fight. And I pray to get this wrongful conviction fixed in 2026. After 43 years, I'm still here fighting. However, things have become more clear as to how the DA's office ran me amok and bamboozled my defense by hiding and misleading evidence that proves my innocence. And I'll say it again, that proves my innocence. I'm innocent, and I can now prove it as I always have said it. I appreciate your attention to this important matter and information. My friend, supporter, and sister from another mother, Miss Amanda Lewis, who will give you some facts on this case and possibly how you can help. I close for now, looking forward to whatever support you can provide. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the program.
Hi, and welcome back to Undisclosed. This is our TJ Towards Justice weekly episode, and we are very excited to have back on our show Dr. Amanda Lewis, who many of you met when we had the Amanda Lewis series. Welcome back, Amanda.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
And of course, as always, I'm joined by Colin. Hey, Colin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Hanging in there. So we asked Amanda to come back, not to actually talk about the Amanda Lewis case. There's so many cases that Dr. Lewis has her fingers in, but there was one case. This case caught my eye when I was kind of reviewing some of the cases and some of the great documentaries made by the PGI Prison Justice Initiative at Georgetown. One of them was about the case of Carmen Woods. And I watched the documentary. I had not heard of this case before. And when I found out that Amanda was involved in this, I was like, we got to have Amanda back on to talk about this case. Colin, are you familiar with Carmen Woods' case?
I've seen the video.
Okay, good.
But
I always wait for Colin to be like, oh, yes, I wrote the memo, the brief support. He's always involved in some way, too. So, Dr. Lewis, tell us about this case.
Yeah, so this one it's an important one. It's a really interesting one. And it's a Philadelphia case. And it is one of the older ones that I've worked on. So on May 16th in 1982, a 17-year-old named Chester Laws Jr. was murdered on North Felton Street. He was shot. This was in West Philadelphia. And at the time, there were no witnesses to the crime. It was right around 2 a.m. And there were really no leads, no witnesses. And this is where the victim's father really comes into play. His name, he's Chester Sr., but we'll call him Tiger because that's what everybody knew him as. And he owned a local bar and was also heavily involved in selling drugs in the area at the time.
The father Tiger was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And essentially, he had different people that worked for him in the neighborhood, but he obviously was distraught. His son has been murdered. And so at this point, he's trying to find anybody who could provide testimony and who may have witnessed the crime. At the scene, there were several people who had heard shots being fired and either called 911 or provided a statement to police after the fact when they showed up. Among those people were Maxine McLaughlin, Omar Akram, Brian Ellison, and a few other individuals. None of them actually saw what happened, but they all lived on the 1500 block of North Felton. And so, to back up and give a little context of how Carmen came up at all in this, he was actually shot about 6 months prior in November in the back by Chester Laws Jr., the victim.
Oh, so there was some beef between them.
There had been previous beef between them, and they had the police had arrested Chester Laws Jr. in some part because Tiger had a lot of pull with local, even politicians, people in the police force, and otherwise they were able to kind of work something out where he had the charges dropped for attempted murder. I think he ended up getting charged with something pretty minor and had to spend a little bit of time in a juvenile facility. And Carmen was okay with this, actually. Like, they had shaken hands and kind of settled everything, and it was, an interesting element to this case. But of course, as soon as Chester Laws Jr. was shot, there were people who were like, oh, Carmen Woods, he had shot him before, blah, blah, blah. So the name initially came up to police that night on the scene because of this. And that's where I think the tunnel vision kind of began on their part.
Right.
So a few days go by, and what's interesting is Tiger is going around with a man named Homer Lane, who's a little older than, Carmen and that kind of age group of boys. He was in I believe his late 20s, early 30s. And he was somebody who, from what I understand, was a heroin addict at the time, and he also was helping, running drugs for Tiger and selling. So he was kind of close with that crew. But he also lived in the neighborhood. I mean, a lot of these guys lived on the block, so a lot of this is kind of centralized to that area. And Chester Jr. lived on the block as well. So he was walking home at the time he was shot. And essentially, Homer Lane kind of went around with Tiger trying to find a witness to the shooting, trying to find or intimidate essentially somebody into saying, hey, they saw this.
Right.
And they weren't able to find anyone. In the meantime, the day after the shooting, or I guess later that morning, around 8 a.m., a call came into the police station. We don't find out about this call until about 3 or 4 years ago, 40 years after the fact. But it comes from a Mr. Hill, and it essentially says, main points of this, is that Mr. Hill, what's interesting also about this, and I can get into more conspiratorial, but he calls in to a narcotics officer, ends up taking this note down. So it wasn't any of the lead detectives on the case. And they write down that Mr. Hill called. This note says that a man wearing dark clothing was running from the scene toward Media Street, which is actually the other direction, as later Homer Lane suggests he was running. He was carrying a gun in his right hand and entered a white and blue Cadillac with a second person inside. He also provided a very specific license plate number.
Oh, wow.
Identifying the car. Now, I'll come back to this because we don't hear about this, like I said, for decades.
Yeah, 40 years.
Yeah. And I'll get back to the other issues at hand with that as well, and what we kind of learned, what I learned in the last 6 months or so, that is part of this new motion. So essentially, everybody's looking for Carmen at this point. He's around. He's not hiding from anybody, but I think he's afraid of Tiger, right? Tiger has previously, been convicted and charged with witness intimidation. He has, threatened other people with a gun. He is known in the neighborhood and kind of feared. So people are afraid of him. And so a couple days after this, on May 18th, Homer Lane and Tiger decide that they're going to go to the police the next morning. The next morning, they show up, and this story is really hard to verify, but it's interesting. It kind of becomes what allows them to go to the police. And essentially, Homer Lane shows up and says that night on the 18th, around 11 p.m. or so, his car was shot at by Carmen Woods and another man named Michael Jones, and that he was driving when it was shot. He says that he decided to drive to the police station to report it right away after he's been shot, and his tire has been shot, by the way, his front left tire. He drives all the way to the police station. It's about 5 or 6 minutes away, changes his mind in the parking lot, drives back to the North Belton Street block, parks the car, and leaves it there. And then he goes in the morning. Actually, Tiger drives him to the police station in the morning to report this. At the same time he's brought in to report this, just a couple hours later, or around the same time, it's hard to tell exactly when, Carmen shows up to the police station with his federal marshal uncle. Basically, like, not necessarily turning himself in, but like, hey, listen, like, you guys...
Yeah.
You want to talk to me?
You want to talk to me? Here I am. I've got a ton of alibis. I don't have anything to hide. Let me come in and talk to you. And so he never leaves custody again. But he goes in and...
So he's arrested when he goes in.
And what's interesting about this is they've actually got somebody else that they're interviewing that morning. So like they're looking into other avenues. Like it's clear now looking at the homicide files, finally, again, after 40 something years, like what the train of thought was, kind of how these things worked out. But it's just interesting that like him coming in to try to do the right thing or talk to them in some ways made it easy for them. And then obviously simultaneously you have Homer Lane coming in saying that Carmen was shot at his car and that he actually saw the shooting the whole time. He wasn't really sure if it was Carmen, but when his car was shot, he knew it was Carmen, and he knew that now he's being threatened, supposedly, and that Carmen knew, he says that, he saw him.
So in other words, he saw the murder, he's saying, and now seeing him shoot up the car, supposedly, is what reconfirms to him, I saw Carmen
correct.
Commit the murder.
And what's interesting is there's a lot of fishy stuff with this too, but let me just make clear at this point, the only evidence against Carmen ever was the statement of Homer Lane.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
And there is no physical evidence, no forensics, no other witnesses, nothing that ties him.
No weapon.
Right.
That ties him to the scene. Now, I bring that up because what's interesting about this shooting with the car is that police claim, which I have no idea if this is still in evidence, and I've got a ballistics expert I had look at some of this year to see if this could even be possible. But they are looking for a .40 caliber because that was the murder weapon. They can't find one in Carmen's home. They can't find one in any of the people he's close with, possession or homes. But supposedly, allegedly, the bullet that struck the tire was a .40 caliber. And police, there's 3 different stories in the homicide files about how they take this tire off of Homer Lane's car. By the way, this car was stolen. He had a warrant out for this car. And
it wasn't actually his car.
It was a rental that he took from Florida. And actually,
okay,
we can get to that because there's some interesting stuff there too. I actually called the county in Florida this year. So Homer Lane's been dead for decades. I called the county in Florida this year where this car was stolen from because they had a warrant out for him. They had a warrant out that went out right around the time of all of this. And it wasn't hidden at trial that he had this warrant out. However, we believe, and it seems very clear, that the police did not cooperate with the warrant. They didn't extradite him. They kind of helped him out, right? So that was another incentive for him. But they had an active warrant out as of this year for him stealing this car.
Wow.
Which was interesting to me. So I was like, you guys can close that case. I can send you some information.
This episode of Undisclosed Toward Justice is brought to you by Wildgrain. Wildgrain is the first Bake from Frozen subscription box for sourdough breads, artisanal pastries, and fresh pastas. Plus, all items conveniently bake in 25 minutes or less. Unlike lots of store-bought options, Wildgrain uses simple ingredients that you can pronounce and a slow fermentation process that's easier on your belly and richer in nutrients and antioxidants. There are no preservatives and no shortcuts. And Wildgrain's boxes are fully customizable. In addition to the variety box, they have a gluten-free box, a vegan box, and a new protein box. My absolutely favorite thing about Wildgrain is that you get to bake all the baked items and the pastries and breads off to completion in your own home. They come to you frozen, you stick them in the freezer, and whenever you want to have a beautiful chewy hot loaf of sourdough bread or some melty giant chocolate chunk cookies and my favorite, they're croissants. You pull them out of your freezer, pop them in the oven, and then when you pull them out, you will feel like an old-timey baker, like you have been slaving away at this stuff, and your family will not know the difference, and it just fills the house with that delicious, fresh, baked goods scent that you can't duplicate, and you're certainly not going to get from store-bought goods. All winter on the weekends, I wake up my kids with something from Wildgrain, whether it's their chocolate croissants, which is just so delicious, their maple Belgian waffles, the giant ginger molasses cookies. All their products feel like a big warm hug on a cold winter's day. I love Wildgrain. I will be a customer for life, and I highly recommend giving Wildgrain a try if you haven't yet. Right now, Wildgrain is offering our listeners $30 off your first box, plus free croissants for life when you go to wildgrain.com/justice and start your subscription today. That's $30 off your first box and free croissants for life when you visit wildgrain.com/justice, or you can use the promo code justice at checkout.
So I talked to a ballistics expert. So this is allowing them to say, okay, there's a .40 caliber used in this, and there was a .40 caliber used to shoot Chester.
In the tire.
So that is their way to tie some forensics. Now, there's no .40 caliber found in Carmen Woods' possession whatsoever.
Can tie the two crimes, but not tie either of them to
Correct.
Carmen.
What's also very interesting to me is that, remember, this car is parked on the block where the shooting occurred, right? Ultimately, that's where they retrieved the tire. And I spoke with a man, a ballistics expert, who told me that he's like done experiments where he's shot tires with .40 caliber rifles. Like, that is kind of what he wrote up. And he's like, it is extremely unlikely that it would stay in the tire. Also, think about this. Like, it would usually obliterate the tire. And he said it would usually go straight through to the other front, because it's the front tire, the other one, and go out. Uh-huh. He had a donut spare tire on the right front tire, the other one, at the time. And he had a story for that as well. So I think it's possible that the tire was shot during the original shooting.
Oh, interesting.
And maybe he was upset about this because he has a stolen car. He can't really go get this fixed. And now he's
he's come up with a story.
And he's also, maybe that's why he's so involved in helping Tiger from the start, because he's pissed off about this car. I don't know. It's just that's my theory.
Were they able to, because this was the era of like really awful ballistics evidence. Did they do the thing where they're like, well, both of these bullets or whatever were shot from the same weapon?
I believe that they did, but the ballistics evidence is so unclear. There's also a lot with this case. I can kind of go back into some of these other side avenues in a little bit, because someone actually shot at Tiger in the days following this with a different type of gun. There's a lot. And so they try to match all these ballistics, and then they actually don't even include some of this in the homicide file because the guns clearly did not match those. They didn't match anything that others had. And so
did Tiger think that was Carmen as well?
Yes. Or I believe so. Although he was actually taking himself in the police station at the time that occurred. So it couldn't have been him, but it was a lot of chaos. And there were also, this was early 80s. There were a lot of different, I don't even want to say gangs, but there were like facets in the neighborhood of this group didn't like this group. And there was a lot going on at that time as well between two different groups that Carmen wasn't involved in whatsoever. And there is word on the street that there was some back and forth with that. And that could have been kind of an excuse for them to target Tiger in that moment as well. But I have there's no evidence of who could have committed the shooting of Tiger. He was okay. But there's some interesting elements with the homicide files because they clearly try to tie it because they sent off for the ballistics, but there's no report on what came back. So that leads me to believe it didn't fly.
So they got rid of the report.
They said we're gonna hold off on that one. Also, I have no idea where the tire is, who took the tire, if there even was a bullet in the tire. I don't know.
The tire disappeared.
Don't know where it is. So it's an interesting element. So let me tell you what Carmen was doing that night. He was out there were two different clubs that they frequented, and I've spoken directly to some of these witnesses that were with him that night. There was a Paradise Club, and there was another club that they were at earlier. Paradise Club was one of those places that you could go after hours. So after the other clubs were shut down around 2 a.m., everybody kind of migrated over to this other one. between like 2 and 3:34 when they closed.
What's the time that the crime occurs?
Around 2:15 a.m.
2:15 a.m. Okay.
Yep. That night, it was a Saturday night. Carmen was out. He had a burgundy suit on, which also doesn't match the description of the suspect. And a lot of people remember seeing him that night. He was out. Mm-hmm. Everybody was out. It was summer. And he was at the one bar, Stacy's bar. That's what it's called. He was there. And then these two girls, one is named Kelly Tilly now. She's wonderful. She was out with him, with her girlfriend. And they needed a ride to the next bar. And she remembers this whole night so clearly. It was really impressive, her memory, because her girlfriend was dating the owner of Stacy's. And so he was having to close up. He wasn't going to be able to join them. Okay. He couldn't give him a ride that night. So they found Carmen and asked him if they could ride with him to Paradise Club. So they rode together. And they rode together around that time. He actually drives down it's all in the same general area. So they are driving down Lansdowne, which is one of the more main streets. Lansdowne connects to Felton, and then it's Media Street. And it's just a small block there. So they go down Lansdowne towards Paradise Club to party for the rest of the night. On their way, they actually pass by Brian Ellison and Omar Ankrum and wave at him. So they do see him in the area. And they live at the top of the street, whereas the shooting kind of happened towards the middle. And then at the very end of the street is where an older, at the time, middle-aged lady, Miss McLaughlin, lived there. All of that is kind of relevant. So the time of the shooting, Omar and Brian had actually been escorting a friend. So instead of coming Lansdowne, which would lead them directly to their house at the very end between Lansdowne and Felton, they were going around the other way where they would be coming up Media, right? And Maxine lived right there at the corner of Media and Felton. So she heard things. She called the police and a couple other people that just heard things.
And Maxine was who? She was the middle-aged lady?
The middle-aged lady. She's now in her almost 90 years old. She's still alive. Oh, wow. She still lives in the same house. I spoke with her as well. So she hears it. First on the scene are Omar and Brian because after the shooting happens, they're not on the block yet. They walk up Media and see him laying there. Maxine comes out. She sees them outside and they're going to get help. People are starting to call. People are going up to his brother's house, which is on the block, to get them outside, make sure everybody, is aware of what's going on. Everybody knows who he is. People have lived there for a long time. So when Homer is tested, this is relevant because they're not called at trial. None of them. Their statements weren't even clearly available at the time of trial. So they were not provided. Omar, Maxine, none of them. So this is Brady material that is discovered sometime between where we are now, which some of these new statements, but they were not turned over at the time of trial.
But wait, did defense counsel know that these Omar and that other, they actually saw Carmen and said how waved at him? Did they know that?
On the scene that night, there was a statement. Omar's person who first brought up Carmen Woods, because of the former shooting in November, he did not see him on the block at the same time. He saw them way up down the street earlier.
Got it. Okay.
But he does say, I saw Carmen Woods earlier. So that's the first time the name comes up. And then that name is then brought to Tiger as well. So he's kind of on his mission at that point.
But did not mention that he was with two girls.
No. Didn't mention. He just said he saw him driving by. I don't think he mentioned who he was around. So we get to trial. And essentially what comes out at trial is Homer Lane's testimony, very specifically.
Yeah.
They have the alibi witnesses there. Mm-hmm. And a couple of them testify. But what they do, and they very clearly explain that they were with him all night. They were there at the time. He even signed the guest book at Paradise Club.
Oh, wow.
And so the police do follow up with the doorman, but they'd follow up with him at his home, not actually at the business. And they kind of downplay that it's needed at all. They say, oh, yeah, we don't need it. He says that Carmen usually signed in the book. He's like, I'm not sure if that day was dated or not, but his name's all over the book. Police, it's hard to say exactly what happened, but it seems that they, first of all, let him destroy the book.
They don't want that book.
They don't want
that book.
They don't want the book. They went and saw him at his house. Yeah. They said, oh, yeah, they kind of forced him into a statement where it was unclear whether or not he'd signed the book or not. even though previously he had very clearly said he signed every time. He would have signed that night. And it could have even shown, like, in the timing of, like, did he sign in before or after somebody that showed up at 1, you know, and before somebody showed up at 3, right? To show when kind of he signed in, even though it wasn't exactly, like, timed out. So the book was never turned over. The book has long been destroyed now, unfortunately. So what they do with the alibi witnesses is they put them outside together of the courtroom and sit them next to each other. Now, a lot of these women knew each other anyway.
Yeah.
And they put the one of the detectives in the same room. So the women are talking to each other. And what they end up doing is they bring this forward, basically saying it should all be thrown out, all their alibi testimony, because they, you know, conspired with each other to get their stories straight outside the courtroom. And Judge Cebu, I think, essentially directs the jury to not fully take their testimony into consideration, more or less. He doesn't fully throw it out, but he completely downplays it. He hypes up the fact that they're, you know, talking to one another, and essentially tells them to discredit it altogether.
So they were set up, basically,
I would say.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And how many alibi witnesses were presented? There
were 3 there.
Okay.
But there were more as well. You know, there were other people that weren't contacted. There's also some really interesting stuff with his defense attorney.
I was about to get there. I'm like,
something we know about very well and undisclosed. Yeah. So tell us what, you know, at the time of trial and thereafter was going on with his defense counsel.
Yeah. So he was later, I believe, fully disbarred for mismanaging cases, money, not filing things on time. But he also had a pretty serious drinking problem. That had come out in the 70s. And beyond all of that, he was beaten up by Tiger the night before showing up to trial. Yeah.
Holy
Tiger
moly.
was intimidating everybody in the entire community, including...
Was he a public defender?
Attorney.
Was he a public defender, court appointed?
Oh, man. I don't think he was a public... I don't think he was a public defender, actually.
Okay.
But I should know this, I feel like.
It doesn't really matter at the end of the day in many ways, but yeah.
And so tell, you know, what are the details of this attack that Tiger does on his attorney?
I mean, this is something too, like, I don't even know explicitly the details, other than, like, from family, different people in the community, like, oh yeah, no, he showed up to court with a black eye. And, you know, it's...
But he did not report the attack to police?
No. Absolutely not. So, yeah. I mean, Tiger clearly had a lot of pull. He also intimidated other witnesses. There was a man, Adam Green, who later stated very clearly that he was with Homer Lane the night of the crime. And that Homer couldn't have been at home because he was in North Philadelphia with him. And Tiger threatened him, so he didn't show up at trial either. Now, I'm not sure if he ever actually went forward to the police. I don't believe that he did, or to the defense attorney. He came forward later. So what's really interesting about this case is, so very quickly, Homer Lane was insistent on the stand that he had, you know, witnessed this event.
Yeah.
But what's very weird, and I've got to get the exact language, it's in the documentary because I read it off the transcript. But Homer is asked if he had been sure that it was Carmen that he saw the whole time. And I believe what he said was, I had an idea it was him. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
So again, he's going around with Tiger in those days between the 16th and the 19th, trying to get other people to come forward, say that they saw this. So if he had seen this, there's no reason that he wouldn't have just come forward first thing, you know?
And that's a huge thing in eyewitness research. It's always important to, in the early days, get a competence check and see, you know, is this person confident of their idea or not? And from what you're describing here, it seems like he was not at all convinced, if we even believe what he's saying, in those days after the murder.
Yeah. Going online without ExpressVPN is like driving a car without a seatbelt, because even if you are the best driver in the world, are you really going to trust your life to all the other maniacs out there on the road? So here's the thing. Every time you connect to an unencrypted network in cafes, hotels, airports, etc., your online data is not secure. Any hacker on the same network can gain access to and steal your personal data, like passwords, bank logins, credit card details. It doesn't take a whole lot of technical knowledge to hack someone. Just some cheap hardware is all that's needed, and a smart 12-year-old can do it. Your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal info on the dark web. And believe me, this sounds like something you see on the news. It happens every single day to people like you and me. If you are out and about and using networks all over the place, every time you connect to a public network, you are exposing yourself. But it would take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years, that's billion with a B, to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. That is how super secure ExpressVPN is. And it is so easy to use. You just fire up the app, click one button, and you are protected. And it works on all devices, phones, laptops, tablets, and more, so you can stay secure on the go. If you are a U.S. customer, they have select plans that include Identity Defender. It's a new suite of tools to get your data removed from data brokers, alert you when your data appears on the dark web, and even insure you against data theft for up to $1 million. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by top tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge, and now they've got their lowest price ever. Their plans start at only $3.49 a month. That is only 12 cents a day. I travel a lot. Sometimes for our cases here on Undisclosed, I got to travel around the country and investigate them, but I travel internationally a lot too. And I use ExpressVPN every time I step out of the house because I need to make sure all the data I have online is secure. I need to make sure everything I have in my computer is secure. I've got my kids' information, I've got client information. It's really sensitive data, and it's critical that I keep it protected with ExpressVPN. So secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/towardjustice. That's expressvpn.com/towardjustice to find out how you can get up to 4 extra months. expressvpn.com/towardjustice. You know, what you just said, Amanda, obviously, if he's seeking witnesses to this and then later says, oh, I forgot, I am a witness to this, I'd be like, none of that makes any logical sense.
Right. No. And so that's where the car story, I think, really comes into play. It's like, you know, I wasn't going to say anything, but I didn't think he saw me, but he must have seen me because he just shot at my car. My car that, you know, had a .40 caliber bullet sitting in the tire, and yet I was able to drive for, you know, at least 10 minutes on that tire. And I've got a picture of the tire. It doesn't look like anybody's been driving on it for that long. So it just doesn't add up. But it was a way to get him in there. The police wanted Carmen. He was one of many brothers and sisters. And, you know, his brothers had gotten in a couple little bits of trouble before for like a burglary. And they were really, you know, the cops in Philadelphia were really focused on property crime that these young black men were committing. You know, that was a big thing that they were interested in solving, whether anyone was harmed or not. And so for them, they have a motive they can explain. They've got an angry father that has a lot of pull. They're saying it's this guy. Easy, right? Then they can just lock it up.
Yeah. And they don't have other leads, it seems like. I mean, like, so.
Not that anyone knows about.
Or do they?
Right.
I just saw that expression. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I want to get to. So basically, and what's really interesting about this case is, first of all, Carmen's fantastic. His family's fantastic. They've had a lot of support. So this is one of those cases where there was a news story on this in 91, which is really interesting. And so getting to Homer Lane, shortly after trial, I believe this first recantation was in 1986. He recants. He says he didn't actually see this. He recants in a written affidavit. He recants later in another written affidavit. And then in 1991, he recants on video.
All right, let's take a listen to some of this recantation.
The first question I'm going to ask you, Homer, did you testified in court that you had witnessed Mr. Carmen Woods commit this murder?
Yeah, Dan.
Did you, in fact, witness Mr. Carmen Woods commit this murder?
No, I didn't.
You did not?
Did not.
Why did you, at the time, testify that you had seen him witness the murder?
It was common knowledge that, you know, that they did do it, and also they shot my car up.
He shot your car up?
Yeah,
When was this? A few days?
A few days after the murder of Chet Laws.
Do you know why he was shooting at your car?
No, I have no idea.
Did you at the time reason that it may have something to do with that you were talking with police about?
Yeah, I surmised that. That's what I thought.
Why did you decide to come out now at this time to set the record straight about this?
Because enough time gone by. The dead boy can't be brought back now. So, you know, was it 10 years or a little more? Enough time's gone by in my mind. So, you know, it's enough and it's enough.
So, you know, this is an interesting thing where at this point, the only evidence against Carmen is Homer Lane. He's recanting very early on. The first 10 years, he's recanted several times. He later dies, right? So he's not around to talk to anymore about any of this, unfortunately. What is interesting is over the years, small pieces of evidence come out before this recent evidence that we've gotten a hold of through the homicide files, which I'll get to in a moment, which is what the basis of this current motion and current post-conviction relief petition is about, that we are actively dealing with right now. So in this, we get a statement from Omar Akram and from Brian Ellison. Homer Lane, as part of his testimony, states that when he got onto the block, so he claims he was walking home when he saw Carmen shoot him. So he claims that he's coming from Lansdowne Avenue and he's passing 1545 North Felton, which is where Brian Ellison and Omar Akram were, he says he passes them and he sees them in the house with the porch door like open right there. And he walks down the block and he sees Carmen shoot Chester from behind, which also contradicts completely the medical examiner. He was shot. The entry bullet is in the center of his forehead.
Right.
So he couldn't have really been shot from behind.
Directly contradictory, yeah.
Essentially, this testimony that comes out is them saying that they came up and found him on media, right? So this is one of the initial things that Carmen files on. That's his Brady. Now, it's not the most strong Brady claim in the world at that point, but he files it. And small bits of things like that come out over the years. Now, I think some of this, interestingly, it was provided to his co-defendant, which is for the car shooting. So Michael Jones is put on trial, and he is tried for attempted murder of Homer Lane, and so is Carmen. So they're convicted of this as well. So they're convicted of that, and then Carmen is convicted of the shooting of Chester and his murder as well. So Michael's attorney was given some of these documents, but Carmen wasn't. Now, it wasn't relevant for Michael's case, right? But that's one way that I think they were trying to get around Brady at the time. Now, these petitions are not successful. But when, Krauser took office, he made it easier for folks to get access to the full homicide files. Now, I have some stuff I want to talk about with that as well. But for the most part, it's great. And what's also insane is that they haven't had access this whole time. I mean, we talk about cases where police reports, evidence, all of that should be available to anybody who is on trial. And I can't imagine how many other people are sitting in prison in the Commonwealth right now who have not seen their files in the entirety. So with this, we get some new information. And this was actually before I came onto the case. So I've been working on this for like a year and a half. But some of this had been, reviewed by Carmen's former attorney. And in that's when he finds the Mr. Hill note saying, hey, there's this license plate to this car. It contradicts the suspect, who it was, and what they look like. It was pretty strong. There are also some other statements from Omar and Brian that are newer, that are not like in whole totally different from their earlier statements. But they talk about Maxine at the end of the block, and Maxine talks about them. That's a statement that wasn't ever turned over until he had access to the homicide files. And she essentially talks about the two young boys at the end of the street that lived, so Brian and Omar, and where they were. So it all kind of paints a cohesive picture, all of which completely contradicts with Homer Lane's testimony.
Yeah.
But the biggest piece of this is really that license plate, right? That's the huge piece of evidence here that is like, what do you mean there was a license plate? And was it ever followed up on? So when I first started working on this case investigatively, it was right after the hearing. I mean, I'd started reviewing it, but when I really started working on it was in December of 2024. And he had just had a hearing on some of these issues. The lawyer at the time just brought up the Mr. Hill note and the license plate number. He didn't go in depth about it. The judge clearly had an issue with his attorney, and he essentially was like, this is not enough. You need to tell me who this license plate belonged to.
Well, I was going to say, how did the lawyer show up without identifying who the car belonged to?
Honestly, I don't know why he didn't do any more in-depth searching, especially once I, eventually was able to look at the homicide files myself, and we'll get there, but
okay.
I don't know. I'm assuming he was, Carmen can't have a mean thing to say about anybody.
Yeah.
So I'll try to be, friendly myself, but I think he was
assuming he was doing his best. Oh, I see.
He was trying.
Okay.
And this is, an issue here is like with these homicide files, the people who are in prison for these crimes, the people who are the defendants, they need to be able to have individual access. So that is something that I would love to work towards in Philadelphia, because I think, like, first of all, they're all under protective order. So you have to have an attorney that goes and gets them. And that attorney has to have the time and the understanding of all these details of the case, or the ability to go sit for hours in a prison to go review them with their client. And most of them are just not doing that. None of the attorneys that Carmen has had throughout this whole post-conviction business have done that with him. And it is very fortunate that I was able to finally gain access to them in around June of 2025, finally. So I'm literally, between December and June, I am working on this, not having access to the homicide files, knowing that there's a Mr. Hill and knowing this license plate. The license plate, it's all handwritten, right? So I actually get a handwriting expert to read the license plate, and I want her to tell me, I want to know what it could be.
Yeah.
What are all the options?
All
I'm
the
going to
possibilities,
request through, PennDOT, all of those options. So I get this statement. She decodes it all. We're also trying to figure out who's the detective who actually took this statement. Ultimately, it's in the homicide files very clearly, typed up. Officer Rogu. So something that we did not have before. We're relying on a handwriting expert to figure out this note that is typed up and discussed in depth in these homicide files. So between December and June, I'm trying to figure out who is Mr. Hill. Couldn't have been a more common name. Like, come on. So I am out here searching anybody in the block, anybody in the area, and I actually do find there are, at the corner of Lansdowne and North Felton, there was a beauty salon. This family had moved in to the area in 81, so they probably were not as well integrated in the community yet. Yeah. They were later. And so it was Miss Mary Hill and Mr. Roscoe Hill. She had Hill's Beauty Salon there.
Oh, wow.
Of course, they all passed away in the last year or two. And then they had a son, Roscoe Jr. But they lived above the beauty salon. And if you look, I've Google Earthed this, I've been there, they would have had a perfect view of the scene.
Right.
Not only that, Roscoe Hill was a mechanic.
Amazing. So
his description of the vehicle, he wrote that it was a 75 Cadillac, and even described that it was like blue, and it says like blue with white, and I didn't know what that was exactly, but I talked to a license plate expert actually, who had some car expertise, and he's like, oh, that was the two-tone like Cadillac back then. It would have looked exactly like this. So it ended up being a 76 Cadillac. We later find out close enough, pretty close. So I reach out to PennDOT. They essentially tell me they don't have the records anymore. I do find Mr. Hill. He's deceased. Pretty much everybody in his family is deceased. I start trying to reach out to his brothers. I mean, anybody.
Yeah. Are those, I'm just curious, even if they had those files, are they, I don't know if this is through a FOIA request, but aren't they confidential? Are they allowed to even?
PennDOT?
Yeah. Is that just like legal counsel can do it, basically?
Every state has like a different law, but so I first requested them. They said they wouldn't give them to me. Then what I did is I wrote them a letter and I attached the court transcript where the judge says, you need to run this license plate and figure out who it belongs to. And I highlighted all of that. And that's when they said, we actually don't have this record anymore.
Okay.
In Florida, you can get those, I know, because I've done it in other cases. Some states you can, some you can't. It just depends. Some they'll give you some information, but not all. So I'm like increasingly frustrated, and I'm just going off these like tidbits of information. Carmen, after the December hearing does not go well, that counsel withdraws. He's assigned a court-appointed attorney. And this was actually a Princeton case, so they're the ones that made the documentary. They're students.
Oh, okay.
And their professors are absolutely wonderful. But they get a court-appointed attorney in March. He refuses to work with us at all. So I'm at this point not allowed. This is while I'm still working with Megan Exonery. I'm not allowed to make phone calls to reinvestigate this case on behalf of these attorneys, which I respect these attorneys. I'm not going to do it. As soon as that class was over, I started making all the calls I possibly could. But, you know, I'm working with Carmen directly as it wasn't part of the course. But eventually, so he's got this lawyer. He's not talking to Carmen. He's not working with us. He doesn't go see Carmen. He's not doing anything. And I'm like panicked. Carmen is the most positive person, but he's starting to panic clearly. So they hire a new attorney, Todd Moser. He takes over. He kind of starts on at the hearing, which is now, I believe it was 7/11. So it was actually July of this last year. And then he gets ready to file everything. He is the person who finally gives me access to the homicide files. And when I start looking at these, I find that not only did they have the Mr. Hill note, but they followed up on the note. They ran the license plate, and it comes back to this man named Willie Williamson. And so police actually go to this man's house, and it was in North Philadelphia. And they are looking, they're like kind of staking it out. And these two individuals, a young man and a young woman, come and get into the car, and the police pull them over. They bring them to the station. So what they find out is Willie Williamson has actually died in March, but his son is driving the car. His name is Reginald Baker, or Reginald Williamson. He kind of goes by both. And his girlfriend, Arnell Bowens. And they are brought into the police station. And at this point, they're giving everybody polygraphs, by the way. So every single person, all the witnesses, Brian, Omar, Carmen, anybody else that's been, provided a statement for the most part in the police station, they have taken a lie detector test, and the results are included with the test. Now, we know it's not admissible, but it's interesting that they're doing that with everyone. They question them and say, hey, were you in West Philadelphia? Do you know this person? Etc. And of course, these are very buttoned up police statements. It's clear that they don't have everything in any of these police statements. They don't have any recordings of the, at least not available to me or us at this time. But they have the basic questions that they asked them.
Summary. Yeah.
And they asked them all these things. And they said, nope, he's never goes to West Philadelphia. He has no connection to West Philadelphia. He doesn't know any of these people. And his car was there the whole night. And that they were with his mother. Arnell says the same thing. At the bottom, it says the polygraph was currently being used by somebody else, so they did not polygraph them.
Could not polygraph them.
Didn't polygraph either of them. And this is all on the 18th when they're brought in, by the way. So, essentially, they never follow up with the alibi. Conveniently, that next morning, Homer Lane comes in and says his car was shot.
Got it.
None of this is ever disclosed to anybody, to Michael, to the lawyers, to Carmen, none of it. And we literally did not know about this until I read this in the report. And Todd Moser read this in the report over this summer.
Right.
But it was in the police file.
Correct.
Which means that there was prior counsel that had access to this file.
Well, it was turned over. Oh, I see what you're saying. Back in December, so
That's
his defense attorney should have had access to it. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know if he just didn't have the ability to read it all. I don't know. It's very strange to me that, in December...
It was in his possession, but he may not have reviewed it.
He clearly didn't review it. And this is why, Krasner, we have got to figure out how to make sure folks who are actually incarcerated have more access to these homicide files.
Yeah.
Because I knew this case extremely well because of Carmen, but I can tell you right now, there's stuff in there, there's stuff about these robberies. There's stuff about things in there that I had to continuously ask Carmen about if he had just had more time with them, if I had been able, which I tried, to, go up there and have more legal visits with him, spend days and days letting him review. And frankly, most attorneys don't even have that time. This is something that is a real challenge, I think, because the homicide files are a mess too. I mean, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents. If you don't read them all meticulously, maybe they wouldn't. Obviously, his former attorney did not do that in this post-conviction work.
Is there a reason they cannot be just copied and mailed to him?
They're under protective order. You have to really you have to be working on his defense.
I mean, but he is the defendant.
Exactly. I don't know. There's got to be a better way.
Wild.
We have got to figure that out. Because as I was reading it, I mean, it's amazing. Let me tell you how happy I was that I finally got these. I mean, I'm over here writing letters, reaching out to PennDOT, getting handwriting experts, and the whole time it's sitting right there.
It's right there, yeah.
So it's beyond frustrating. I'm very glad we have it now, but it's one of those things where I can't imagine how many other people are sitting there and they don't know what's in the file. And we don't even have the complete file. There's more in there. This was just what the former attorney had requested, and it's, I think, certainly enough. I mean, we're talking about Brady material where they had an alternate suspect they never even followed up on. And if you know about tunnel vision, how that works, they had a reason to believe it was Carmen. They now have this witness.
What was the name of the alternate suspect?
Reginald Baker. And he is also
Williamson.
deceased.
Yes.
But something that's interesting is Reginald, his father. So Mr. Williamson, the person who the car belonged to, he was a Korean War veteran. And the type of weapon that they would have used, so the .40 caliber, it also had I think it's called right-handed twist. It's just the way that the bullet kind of comes out. And both, they claim the car tire bullet and the one that killed Chester Laws both had this right-handed twist.
Okay.
Well, that's exactly the type of weapon that would have been issued for veterans, for people who were in that.
Serving at the time.
Mhm.
Right.
So that's interesting to me. And Reginald Baker had a later charge. He had a couple of violent crimes later, nothing that reached the level of murder, but he did have that, and he died.
Did Carmen know who he was?
No.
Did Carmen have any idea? Oh, he had no idea.
And no one really knew who he was. So that's what's also interesting. He wasn't super tied to the community, as far as we know, though. Like, I'm looking into this. I'm trying to find connections almost 44 years later.
Yeah.
So
where's Tiger at right now?
He's also deceased.
The Tiger's deceased as well.
He died actually not too many years afterwards.
So where are you procedurally in the case?
Yes. So right now, after Todd and I got into these records, we were able to paint much more clear a picture of the Mr. Hill, Brady issue and the alternate suspects. And then what we did is, I don't know how familiar you all are with the new Glossop versus Oklahoma case. I'm sure, Colin, you can probably give more of a clear overview of it, but it's a huge case. It's a huge case for people that are wrongfully convicted.
Absolutely.
In post-conviction litigation. Yeah. I'm really excited to use it, hopefully in lots of cases. But essentially what it does is it allows you to look at former Brady or Nepu issues that have been potentially already litigated, things that you would normally be time barred from, or things that, you've already litigated this, so you can't bring that up again. Like the Omar statements or the Brian Ellison statements, those things were previously litigated on. So even though the files indicate that there were other statements that are still vital, they don't typically, you wouldn't be able to rely on them in the same way. Now, what this says, and in Glossop's case, it's kind of similar to this because there was just one witness against him and different things came out over the years. And I've been calling this drip disclosure because essentially you're getting these little drips, these little drops of Brady material, maybe on their own, the court would rule, well, that's not enough to change the jury verdict. But when you take them together in their totality, combined with whatever new evidence comes out, like in where we are here, this Mr. Hill issue, you have to look at them in their totality. Because if not, then does it really make sense? And at this point, I would say very clearly, and that's kind of what the motion that we have currently in is arguing, is that when you look at all this together, particularly the Homer Lane recantations, which of course that's been litigated on, you take that, it's the only evidence they had against him. Even the Commonwealth attorney back at trial said yep, this is the most important witness we have.
That's all we got. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got clear evidence now that his car was stolen, that clearly they never, there was no contact ever made between Philadelphia police and I think it was Martin County, Florida. Even though they had him there, they knew exactly where it was, and they knew there was a warrant out for his arrest.
Did the court just not accept the recantation as being genuine? Like what?
Pretty much.
That's, yeah.
Well, the first time he recanted, he re-recanted at the hearing. Because at that point, Tiger was still alive. I think he was probably fearful.
Oh, Lord.
So that really messed things up, of course.
How close in age is it? Reginald Williamson's son and the victim. How close in age were the two of them?
Reginald Baker was a little bit older.
Okay.
But if you think about it, they're all kind of pretty much, even though Chester Jr. was a little younger, he was 17. That age range, like 17 to 30, they're all kind of, if they're involved in, drug activity or, that life, they all kind of knew each other. So it's certainly plausible. Plus, Jones is a super common last name, but the girlfriend, Arnell Bowens, her last name currently is Jones, and I actually think that may have been her maiden name. There may have been some connection to other individuals there. We got Michael Jones, Melvin Jones, other Joneses on the block. So there's other people that they could have been connected to. But it's also interesting that, Mr. Hill stated that there were two people in the car. And then, so it could have been that Reginald was with somebody else that was involved, or it could have been the girlfriend. I don't know. She's still alive. I'm not going to, say she was involved or not involved. I don't know. But
has anybody spoken to her?
Not yet. I've tried. I tried to find her right before we filed this, but I was not successful as of yet. But so right now in October, the brief was filed on Carmen's behalf on these issues. The DA asked for, I think, 60 days. He got almost, 90 days. On January 7th, there was a hearing. They asked for another 30 days, the DA. We were under the impression that they were not going to oppose this. They actually weren't. They were stipulated to all the facts back in December before more details came out about, like, who the car belonged to. So it's interesting that they're asking for more time. And on February 4th, which is next Wednesday, there will be another hearing, and that will be when the DA responds, because they did get their 30 days, but the current judge, who is different from the judge in December, said they will have no more. They won't be given no more additional time.
Right.
Larry Krasner, why are you asking for more time? I'm curious. Maybe they're asking for more time because they're like, oh, this is an actual innocence case, and let's take another look before we make a decision one way or the other, fingers crossed.
Yeah,
right?
That's the hope. And I think, it's slightly different than the arguments from December, and that's unfortunate because really Carmen's lawyer back in December should have been able to adequately, argue these things. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what was happening, but he totally stepped back because he felt, I believe, he was harming Carmen's case. Not only because, I don't know if he just was too busy, had a lot going on, but because the judge at the time did not seem to, like, it was Judge DeClaudio, they were definitely butting heads. So he stepped back. But then again, Carmen then got this, attorney who was court appointed, did not want to work with anyone else, which, that's fine if you're going to do the work. He didn't do anything. Now we have this new lawyer who has, been much more responsive.
Also court appointed?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
well, what I'm glad his current counsel has you working on the case and is cooperating. I mean, because frankly, I do think a lot of attorneys don't have the bandwidth to do this on their own. They need investigative help. They need help. And even I can't tell you how many times it's happened where it's like, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 people look at a file. Every single person sees something different and finds something different. It happens over and over again. You should always have multiple people look at files because you will miss things and others will miss the things that you caught, and different things stand out to different people. So, and it's almost impossible for an attorney to do this by themselves. And most of them are working in a completely solo capacity on these cases. It's tough. And
that's the thing is, like, I don't blame, I get it. And Carmen understands. I just wish he's so intelligent. He's so aware. He was the one pushing glossip this whole time. He was so excited about that ruling. And, it's very new. So I think a lot of attorneys don't know about it either. And even the current attorney, he didn't realize. And when he spoke to Carmen, when he read what I had written up on glossip, he's like, oh shit, this is actually great. Like, because it's a new thing. So I've been telling all my incarcerated students about it as well. And
Yeah. Colin, are you aware of any successful, post convictions that rested on the Glossop ruling, or is it too fresh?
I think it's too fresh to have the actual rulings, but I'll look and I'll blog about any cases I find where it's been successfully used. It's certainly, as Dr. Lewis notes, an avenue towards reopening these issues, and both substantively and procedurally, it's a very favorable ruling for people who are incarcerated.
So, at this point, well, first of all, what are kind of the possibilities of what could happen next in court?
yeah, so, best case scenario, the DA comes back and they join the motion to overturn the conviction.
Mm-hmm.
That would be absolutely best case scenario. So that was what we hoped
Fingers
for.
crossed.
Fingers
Yeah.
crossed. They could stipulate to the facts and not necessarily join the motion, but not oppose it. It could go to the judge to rule on. I don't know if that would happen right away. I think that, at least Mr. Moser will come ready to, do whatever next week. And then the option is that they are against it in some way. And so I don't know what they could say. I don't know how they could argue against it.
If they argue against it and you're not successful here, can this be appealed?
Well, I think there's a good chance that the judge might still see it our way.
Okay. And grant it.
Yeah. So that is what I'm hopeful for. I think looking at the facts, I don't know what they could, say. There's also possible that some middle area where they try to offer an Alford plea, or they try to offer a plea for the attempted murder of Homer Lane, which is like kind of that separate case, even though, again, it's all resting on Homer Lane's testimony and this bullet that may or may not exist. I don't know. So I don't think that would be fair. I don't think he should have to plead guilty to anything he didn't do. But it's almost been 44 years. So he's in his 60s at this point. He was 19 when he got locked up. He's got some adorable grandchildren that I think, if he was to get out now, they may never remember a time when he wasn't around. He's got wonderful siblings, a wonderful wife, his daughter and son. So I'm just hopeful that he can come home. There's an interesting thing that it might be relevant for other cases that came up. So I asked him, I'm like, okay, so is there anything that we need to deal with that if, for example, the conviction's overturned in court, like, are there any things that you've been in prison since 1982. So is there anything that's going to come up that we need to handle that, you're going to have to like deal with in terms of like counting time or classifications? And it's really interestingly, I don't know if you all are familiar with the riot in 1989. It was I think it's Camp Hill riot. I can double check. It was a prison riot in a Pennsylvania prison in 89 there's a lot of large scale like property damage. And so he has a rioting charge from that. And so it's funny because another exoneree that was a former Princeton case, Muti, he was actually at the court on January 7th when we had his most recent hearing. And he brought it up to me. He was like, does he have that riot thing or anything he needs to worry about? Because I guess, they just charged everybody. If you were there, they charged you. So he doesn't have any serious charges. I doubt he even like really participated, but everybody was there and they were charging everyone. And so essentially it's going to end up being time served, but it may take a couple extra days. So it may not be that you get to walk out that day. I'm hoping we can do anything we can to just kind of front load and like get that taken care of beforehand. So that's what I'm working on now as well.
And where we mentioned the documentary, and we will link to it on our social media when we post this as well, folks. And how else can our listeners like support Carmen? Yeah,
so he has a website, Justice for Carmen Woods. I've sent that to you all, and you can link that to the episode as well. And I believe there's a place you can donate. He has a Facebook page as well. Like, they've got like lots of different fundraisers that they do locally often. His daughter she makes these amazing plates of food and sells them to raise money for him as well. So there's lots of things like that you can do. His sister just wrote a book. I'll promote that real quick.
About the case?
Not about the case. She's just trying to also get stuff. And she's like one of his, diehard supporters. So that's another thing. But the website they have created, it's been around for, a while. So the family maintains it, but it's got some really interesting stuff. You can see different police statements. You can see the Mr. Hill letter is in there, the note. You can see the full video recantation of Homer Lane and some of that original footage. So it's a great resource to kind of learn more about the case as well.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And we will definitely link it as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Amanda Lewis, for coming on. That was, I can tell you eat, sleep, breathe this case, the way you rattled off so many names and dates and pertinent information. And we wish you the best in all the work you're doing. And of course, Carmen as well. And gosh, I would love for Larry Krasner to listen to this episode. So we'll definitely try to tag Larry Krasner in this as well. All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Lewis, and we'd love to have you back for an update, maybe, I don't know, 4 to 6 months from now when things kind of pan out one way or the other.
Hopefully sooner than later.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. We will be back next week with another fascinating conversation about a case you don't want to miss. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Carmen. I guess what I want to ask you, too, is, how do you feel this last year or so and just getting access to what's been in the homicide files? And I feel like, you didn't even get a full picture until this summer of all that's in there, right? I talked about the Mr. Hill license plate note and all of that. So tell us a little bit about, your feelings there and kind of how that's all come about over the years of more access.
Well, throughout the years, I've never had access to homicide files, and I do thank Larry Krasner for opening that office up. And when I had the lawyer that I originally had, Evan Foster, he went and got the homicide files, and I was able to review them. And in reviewing them files, I discovered breeding material that they were holding back that showed my innocence, but they knew that I was innocent. That moment, and when I first discovered this, when we first discovered it was such an emotional moment, tears came to my eyes, that the reality is that I'll be free. And more things started coming out that I didn't quite understand in terms of how some of the evidence was connected to other evidence. And this is where Maxine McLaughlin came in at. And her statement, it was a clear evidence of my innocence. And she has showed that the witness, he was already a known liar because he was convicted of crime of falsity. But with her statement established the fact that 2 other guys came up on the block after the shooting. The statement at Homer Lane, which was the linchpin of my case, saying that, and this is what they got a warrant based on the fact that Homer Lane saying 2 guys were already on the block, and the guy, before he got killed, they walked past them 2 guys. And then after the guy got killed, I ran past the 2 guys. But this never happened. This was a lie. That was the many lies that Homer Lane had made, and how I felt. And I still carry a more positive emotion that brings tears to my eyes of joy. He was still in his moment. I talk about it with you. It's a very emotional moment, and I'm so grateful. Never giving up hope. Always pushing the fight, always trying to mobilize with my family.
You have 1 minute left.
And especially with you, Amanda. I'm very, very thankful.
Well, I'm thankful for you. And I know we're about to get cut off, but how do you stay so positive? Because you are more positive, you keep us hopeful and encouraged.
I'm going to tell you, in short, before this phone cut off, I stay positive because I have the hope and I pray and I have that faith that, the God, Allah is going to change the situation with prayer and patience, that I have that hope that it's going to change. And now I can see it. This tunnel was a long tunnel, like a long marathon, but now we at the end of this thing, I can see that light. I can see that finish line. And I'm truly thankful. And we're going to do that. We're going to be there together. Yeah. We'll be there together. We looking forward to the success, and we hoping soon, 2026 is the time for it to get fixed.
Yeah.
Take care, man.
Thank you, Crazy.
Love you, Carmen.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Hey, Undisclosed listeners. It's Mithil, executive producer of Undisclosed Toward Justice. Before I roll through the credits, I've got a few quick notes. By now, most of you probably know about our Facebook community group. If you haven't joined yet, please go to facebook.com/groups/towardjustice and answer 3 simple questions and you're in. But seriously, answer the questions because a bunch of you are still pending since you've only answered 1 or 2. They're easy questions, I promise. In addition to engaging with us through the Facebook group, you can also leave us a voice note at speakpipe.com/undisclosed. We always check the messages, and so far, I think we've answered all of them. We also have a Patreon page with 3 different tiers of perks, the lowest one just being $1, which allows us to continue to do this work. Other tiers include bonus episodes, early access to merch, and even joining Rabia in a live true crime Zoom discussion. Just go to patreon.com/undisclosedpod. Now, onto the real credits. A huge shout out to Hannah McCarthy for audio production. Thank you to Patrick Cortez and Ramiro Marquez for our theme music. For anyone new here, you can engage with us online by going to Instagram or Facebook at Undisclosed Podcast. We're also on TikTok, YouTube, and X at Undisclosed Pod. Whether you're a new or returning listener, you can always check out our previous cases and bonus episodes by going to our website at undisclosedpod.com. If you would like to follow Colin and Rabia on social media, you can find Rabia at Rabia2 on Instagram and Colin at EvidenceProf on Instagram, X, and Blue Sky. Thank you all for your continued support and for supporting all of our sponsors. Until next time.